Excuse me. You can't be in this pool without proper HOA clearance. I turned around, towel around my neck, sunblock still fresh on my arms, and saw her. A woman in her mid-50s, short blonde bob, big sunglasses, wide-brimmed sun hat, red face already boiling with rage. She had her phone in one hand and a clipboard in the other, stomping towards me in flip-flops like she was leading an FBI raid. "My name is Karen Walters," she barked, "and I am the president of the Clearwood Estates HOA. You're in violation of our pool use policy and will be fined $500 immediately." I blinked, confused. "Wait. What?" She pointed at the gate behind me. "This is a private HOA-controlled pool. And you just walked in like you own the place." I tilted my head. "I do own the place. That house right there. The blue one with the stone driveway." I pointed directly behind her. She didn't even flinch. "That doesn't matter. All properties in this area fall under HOA rules. And unless you've paid your dues and submitted your pool guest policy form, you're trespassing. This is your first and only warning before legal action." My heart started racing, not from fear, but from disbelief. I moved into that house barely 3 weeks ago. And I remembered the real estate lawyer clearly saying the words. "Don't worry, this home is not part of the HOA. They tried to expand years ago, but this section was legally excluded." I slowly walked over to the edge of the pool and stared at her. She was already scribbling something furiously on her clipboard. Then she said it, loud and clear. "If you do not vacate the pool area immediately, I will call security, and you will be escorted off the property, and fined." I smirked. "You do that." I turned, walked back to my chair, and reached into my bag. She leaned over the fence, her voice rising. "That's it. You'll regret this. We have court authority." I pulled out a folded white paper, creased from being stored in my side pocket. It was a property deed. Stamped. Signed. Legal. I walked back to her and unfolded it right in her face. "Read the third paragraph." "Go on." "I'll wait." She glanced at it, her lips tightening, then her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. This can't be right," she muttered. "Oh, but it is," I said. "I'm not under your HOA. Never have been. Never will be." And then, with a loud click, the gate behind her swung open again. Another man stepped in. Not just any man. A private security officer. And he was heading straight for me. Karen pointed and screamed, "There. That's the one trespassing." The security guard reached for something on his belt. And I froze. Was this actually happening? Was I about to get arrested, on my own property? The security officer stepped closer, his boots crunching softly on the hot pavement. He had a radio strapped to his shoulder and a notepad in his hand. Karen stood behind him like a villain in a courtroom drama, arms crossed smugly like she had already won. "There," she said again, almost jumping. "He's using the HOA pool without permission." He admitted it. The security guy raised one hand toward me. "Sir, I'm going to need you to step away from the pool area while I assess the situation." I stood frozen for a moment, still holding my property deed in one hand and my half-finished soda in the other. "But this is my neighborhood. My house is literally right there," I pointed again. "And I'm not part of any HOA. Check the records. My property isn't under Karen's jurisdiction." Karen scoffed. Lies. Typical new homeowner behavior. Always think the rules don't apply to them. I looked at the security guard and slowly handed over the deed. "Please read it. I'm not being difficult, I'm just not about to be bullied." He took it, squinted, and walked over to a shaded area under the cabana near the gate. He pulled out his phone, probably to verify the document, while Karen muttered under her breath. I've been president for 7 years. No one disrespects HOA policy on my watch. I turned to her. You mean, your version of policy? Her face turned even redder. Meanwhile, the officer paced slowly while reading, occasionally glancing back at my house. I waited, sweating, irritated, and honestly just trying not to snap. After about 5 minutes, he walked back, folded the deed neatly, and handed it back to me. Well? Karen asked, clearly expecting him to drag me out by my shirt. The security guard looked at her, then at me. Sir is correct. His property is not included in the HOA zoning. I just pulled up the subdivision boundaries and parcel ID. His house was exempted in a court ruling 5 years ago. Karen blinked. That can't be. That's impossible. We have jurisdiction over every house on this block. The guard shook his head calmly. Not this one. I'm sorry, ma'am, but you don't have legal authority to fine or evict him from any shared spaces, especially not this pool. In fact, he looked around. There's no official HOA signage here. This pool is part of the old neighborhood association, before it merged with Clearwood. Karen's mouth hung open. This is absurd. I've been managing this place for years. No one ever challenged me. The guard frowned. Well, you may need to recheck your records. This gentleman has every right to be here. I couldn't help it, I smiled. That's when Karen lost it. She snatched the clipboard from the chair beside her, threw it across the concrete, and yelled, "This neighborhood is falling apart because of people like you." People nearby, some already sunbathing, others sipping lemonade, began turning to stare. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my cool. All I want is peace, Karen. I bought that house to get away from drama. She turned on her heel and stormed off, muttering something about lawsuits and calling the Real HOA board. The guard nodded once and said, "If she comes back and causes problems, let us know. You're within your rights." I thanked him, sat back down, and dipped my feet into the pool, finally trying to relax. But I should have known better. Karen wasn't done. The next morning, I opened my mailbox to find a bright orange envelope. Inside was a paper titled, "Notice of HOA Violation, Unauthorized Property Renovation and Pool Access. Fine, $1,000 due immediately." What? I hadn't done any renovation. And now the fine doubled overnight. I looked up from the paper and saw her. Karen. Standing across the street with binoculars. Smiling. I stood at my mailbox for a full minute, just staring at the ridiculous orange violation notice in my hand. Unauthorized property renovation. I muttered out loud. What renovation? I literally haven't even changed the light bulbs yet. Across the street, Karen stood behind her white picket fence, holding a pair of oversized binoculars and sipping from a mug that said, "Queen of the Neighborhood." She was watching me. I waved the paper in the air and shouted, "You're not even my HOA, Karen." She just smiled, turned, and went back inside her house like she had already won. I walked back inside my home and slammed the door shut. This was insane. I'd only been in the house for 3 weeks. No renovations. No noise complaints. No violations. Nothing even close to a fine. But Karen clearly wasn't done with me. That same afternoon, I called the county office and asked for a zoning map of my area. Again, they confirmed, my house was not under any HOA control. I even asked them to send me a certified copy, which they gladly did for a small fee. The real estate lawyer I worked with also replied to my email. Yes, you are 100% exempt from the HOA. They've tried to intimidate homeowners like this before. You can ignore the fines, but keep a record in case they escalate. And escalate, they did. 2 days later, I came home from the grocery store and noticed a fresh yellow sticker on my garage door. Property in violation, under review by HOA for non-compliance. My jaw dropped. How did she even put this on my house? Was she sneaking into my driveway? That was the last straw. I decided to set up a little surprise. I installed 2 small motion sensor cameras, one by my front porch light and another above the garage, camouflaged under the roofline. I figured if Karen or anyone from her fake HOA patrol tried anything again, I'd have proof. Sure enough. It only took 24 hours. The next morning, I checked my camera footage while sipping coffee, and my heart started pounding. At 4:12 a.m., the motion detector triggered. There she was, Karen. Wearing a black hoodie, tiptoeing across my lawn like a cartoon burglar, holding a roll of those yellow stickers and some kind of folder. She physically stuck another violation notice on my mailbox, took pictures, and walked away like it was nothing. Unbelievable. I clipped the video and emailed it to my lawyer. But instead of reacting, I waited. I wanted her to dig her own hole a little deeper. Sure enough, that weekend, while I was cleaning the pool, she showed up again, this time with 2 other women behind her. All of them wore polo shirts that said, Clearwood HOA Enforcement, in big blue letters. Karen marched right up to my gate, pointed like she was casting a spell, and shouted, "That's him. He's been hostile and uncooperative. Time to serve him in person." One of the women approached with a white envelope. "You're being served an HOA cease and desist notice. Any further use of this pool will result in court action and penalties." I stared at the envelope. Then I looked into their smug faces. And I smiled. "I'd be careful if I were you," I said calmly. Karen narrowed her eyes. "Or what?" "That camera right there," I said, pointing to the device above my porch, "just recorded you vandalizing my property at 4 a.m. last night." Her face changed instantly. The smugness melted into something else, panic. "You're bluffing," she said, lips twitching. "Am I?" I said, pulling out my phone. I tapped the screen. Then I played the video. There she was, in full color and night vision clarity, Karen the HOA ninja, caught red-handed. The other 2 women gasped. One of them took a step back. Karen's face turned ghostly pale. You had cameras," she whispered. I nodded. "And I've got a lawyer." Suddenly, Karen's phone buzzed. She looked at the screen and gasped. Then she turned to me and snapped. "You're going to regret this. I'm calling the county, right now." But when I heard what she said next into the phone, I froze. She wasn't calling the HOA. She was calling Child Protective Services. I watched in stunned silence as Karen raised her phone to her ear and turned slightly away, but not far enough that I couldn't hear her. "Yes, hello," she said in her sweetest fake voice, "I need to make a report. There's a man living across the street from me. I'm very concerned about the safety of the child on the property." My blood went cold. Child? What was she talking about? "I've heard yelling," Karen continued, now pacing. And I've seen him leaving the little boy outside alone by the pool for hours. It's extremely unsafe. There was no child. I don't have any kids. I don't even own a dog." I took a step forward. "Karen, are you seriously making up a fake report to CPS now? Are you out of your mind?" She turned around and hissed at me, covering the speaker with her palm. "You think you're smart? Let's see how smart you are when they show up." Her friends were already backing away, clearly realizing the line had been crossed. "Let's go, Karen," one whispered nervously. But she waved them off. "No. I'm not done. He's dangerous. A threat to the community." I pulled out my phone and hit record. I didn't say a word, just made sure to catch every second of her bogus call. That would be proof. 10 minutes later, she walked off, heels clicking on the sidewalk like a final warning. I felt my pulse in my ears. This was no longer about pool access or fake fines. She was trying to ruin my name. That night, I emailed the video of Karen's 4 a.m. trespassing to both my lawyer and the local sheriff's department. Just to be safe. But the next morning, they came. A white government SUV parked outside around 10:15 a.m., and a woman in a beige blazer stepped out with a clipboard. "Mr. Walker," she asked politely when I opened the door. "Yes, ma'am. My name is Paula Harrison. I'm with Child Protective Services. We received a report of possible child endangerment on this property." I exhaled slowly and invited her in. "There's no child here, Ms. Harrison," I said. "That report came from a neighbor trying to harass me." She looked around the living room, then glanced out the back window toward the pool. "May I ask, are there any children regularly visiting the home? Nieces, nephews?" "Nope. I live alone. Bought the place 3 weeks ago. Haven't even had a visitor." She raised an eyebrow. "Mind if I take a quick walk around?" I nodded and led her out to the backyard. She inspected everything: the pool gate, locked; the deck, clean; the yard, fenced. "This all looks in order," she said. I figured. But if you want to hear something interesting, I walked her back to the front door, where my laptop was already open. I played the recorded CPS call I'd caught Karen making just yesterday. Ms. Harrison's eyes widened. "That's highly inappropriate." "Her name is Karen Walters," I added. "She's been harassing me since day one. Fake HOA claims, fines, trespassing, now false CPS reports." Ms. Harrison sighed. "We don't take false reports lightly. I'll have to file this internally." She handed me a card. "If you receive any further harassment, contact us again. But from what I see here, you're in the clear." I smiled and thanked her. Just as she turned to leave, another car pulled up. But this wasn't CPS. It was a silver Mercedes. And the woman who stepped out? Not from the neighborhood. Not friendly either. She marched across the street with high heels and fury in her eyes and went straight to Karen's front door. I watched from behind my curtain as Karen opened the door. Their voices raised almost immediately. The stranger shouted, "You used my name on what? Are you insane?" Karen shrieked, "Lower your voice, Marlene. It's not your business." The woman, apparently Marlene, screamed back, "It is my business if you're forging documents with my business card." I pulled my camera back out and started recording again. Just as Marlene threw a folder full of printed HOA letters into Karen's yard. One flew open. It had my name on it. And a forged signature that wasn't mine. The folder hit Karen's lawn like a paper bomb. Printed letters spilled everywhere, most of them stamped with a fake HOA letterhead and all signed M. Langston, with titles like HOA Administrative Officer, Zoning Enforcer, and Community Compliance Director. Except, one big problem. Marlene Langston, the furious woman now screaming at Karen, was very real, and clearly very done with the games. "You forged my name." Marlene shouted loud enough for the entire neighborhood to hear. "You printed fake notices, used my business logo, and filed them in my name." Karen was trying to close the door, but Marlene was relentless. "And I'm telling the county," Marlene said, stepping forward. "Because now you've dragged my company into your neighborhood fantasy war." My phone camera captured every second. The fake cease and desist letters, the fraudulent documents, and the unmistakable sound of Karen lying through her teeth. "This is all a misunderstanding," Karen hissed, reaching down to gather the papers. But Marlene wasn't having it. "Misunderstanding? You've been running a fake HOA racket using my old real estate business name. What happens when the IRS gets this? You think they'll ignore it?" Karen turned and screamed, "You're just jealous I made this community better." Marlene actually laughed, cold and sharp. You mean better by threatening people, vandalizing homes, and collecting fake fines? That last word made me pause. Wait. Collecting? I stepped outside with the camera still rolling. Karen, are you telling people to pay you? Karen froze like she had seen a ghost. Marlene turned slowly and locked eyes with me. She's been issuing fine letters to new homeowners. I found 3 of them in the glove box of her car this morning. All had her Venmo on the bottom. I nearly dropped my phone. You were trying to scam me? I said. Karen's eyes darted around, trying to find someone, anyone, to back her up. But this time, her front yard was full of silent neighbors, drawn in by the yelling. Phones were out. Cameras were up. The perfect storm. That's when Mr. Harlan, the elderly man from 2 houses down, walked up and added, "She fined me $300 last year because my grandson's bike was against community colors. Said it broke paint uniformity. I just paid for it. I didn't know." Another woman chimed in, "She charged me for having Christmas lights in January." Someone else, "She told me my patio furniture violated Section 9A and demanded $100 in cash." I couldn't believe it. Karen hadn't just been targeting me. She had built a whole fake HOA empire.
Marlene stepped forward and said what we were all thinking. "You committed fraud, Karen." Karen opened her mouth to deny it, but before a word came out, a loud voice rang from the street. "Ma'am, hands where we can see them." Everyone turned. 2 county deputies had arrived, stepping out of a black SUV. One had his hand resting on his belt, the other holding a file folder. Karen turned pale. "Ma'am," the first deputy said, "we received a report about an unauthorized person impersonating a municipal officer and issuing fraudulent fines under a dissolved business name. Are you Karen Walters?" Karen took a shaky step back. I don't know what you're talking about." The second deputy cut her off. "We also have a report of false claims made to Child Protective Services regarding a non-existent child. That's a federal matter." Karen started to shake. "This is a setup. He's trying to frame me. That man, he's not even part of the HOA." The deputy looked at me. "That's exactly the point, ma'am." Karen spun around, tripped on the edge of her porch steps. And as the folder of fake violations scattered around her again, she bolted. Yup. Karen took off running down the street, with 2 deputies chasing her on foot. Karen was surprisingly fast for someone in flip-flops. She dashed down the middle of the street like it was some twisted Olympic event, screaming something about tyranny and "my neighborhood, my rules," as 2 deputies sprinted after her. Everyone stood frozen for a moment, mouths open, until one of the neighbors muttered, "Did she just run from the cops?" I blinked. She really did. The second deputy caught up first, pinning her gently against the neighbor's garden fence. "Karen Walters, you're being detained pending investigation into multiple offenses including impersonation, false reporting, and potential fraud." Karen shrieked, "This is my neighborhood. These are my people." But her people? They just stood there, watching, recording, whispering. No one stepped in to help. By the time they put her in the back of the SUV, Karen was sobbing, her mascara running, mumbling something about just trying to keep things beautiful. But the real shocker came later that afternoon. The deputies stayed behind, asking a few of us if we'd give statements. I handed them the camera footage, the recordings, the orange violation letters, and a copy of my deed. Mr. Harlan from down the street offered his own statement too, finally relieved someone else had seen the insanity for what it was. But then something happened none of us expected. The sheriff himself showed up. Tall guy. Gray mustache. No-nonsense stare. He knocked on Karen's door holding a search warrant. Apparently, someone from inside the department had seen my video online. It had already gone semi-viral. A neighborhood teenager posted it with the caption, #KarenCaught. The sheriff entered with 2 deputies. About 20 minutes later we saw them carry out boxes. Tons of them. One neighbor asked what they were. The sheriff simply said, "Evidence." Then one deputy turned to me and added, "Sir, you might want to hear this." He pulled out a folder with dozens of printed emails, correspondence between Karen and homeowners, some begging for more time to pay made-up fines. Some threatening to sue. One email stood out. It was addressed to a realtor. Karen had written, If I can keep pressing the new guy with made-up fines, he'll either pay or move. Then we can offer the house to someone HOA compliant. My heart sank. She was trying to force me out. Deliberately. Targeting me from day one with made-up violations, hoping I'd either cave or leave, so she could make the neighborhood pure HO again. The sheriff placed a hand on my shoulder. You have grounds to file for damages. This woman's been running an unauthorized operation for years. I nodded slowly. What about the people she actually took money from? He sighed. They'll be part of the case. Once we finish gathering evidence, there'll likely be a class action. Word spread fast. News crews showed up by sunset. One reporter even asked if I'd give a short interview. I said no. This wasn't about fame. This was about peace. And for the first time in weeks, I finally felt like I had it. But just as I sat down on my porch that evening with a cold drink, I got a text from an unknown number. You really think you won? You don't know who Karen's connected to. My smile faded. A second message popped up. She's not the only one who wanted you gone. I stared at the screen. And then I saw it. A drone. Hovering just above my roof. Someone else was watching me. The drone hovered silently above my roof. Slick. Black. Camera mounted. I stood up slowly from my porch chair, eyes fixed on it, phone still in hand with that last threatening message glowing on the screen. She's not the only one who wanted you gone. I pulled out my phone camera and recorded the drone, making sure to catch its blinking red light. Then I walked inside, locked the doors, and checked the perimeter cameras. Sure enough, the drone had flown in from the west side of the neighborhood. Not from Karen's house. From another one. 3 doors down. I didn't know much about that house except that it had been unusually quiet. Never saw anyone come or go. No lights. No mail. And yet, the grass was always trimmed. I checked the footage again. The drone had been launched from that backyard. It didn't take long for me to decide what to do. The next morning, I filed a report with the sheriff showing them the drone footage and the threatening messages. They promised to open a new investigation and advised me to be extra cautious. But what they found next made everything clear. Behind that quiet home was a secret HOA board office. Yup. Turns out, there was a private group of 6 neighbors who had formed their own executive HOA advisory committee. They weren't part of the official Clearwood HOA, but they were enforcing made-up bylaws, collecting payments, and using Karen as their front woman. They stayed out of the spotlight. She took the heat. But they were the ones pulling the strings. The drone? Their surveillance toy. They used it to watch homeowners, especially new ones. They wanted to intimidate, force sales, and reclaim non-compliant homes to flip and resell. And Karen? She wasn't just trying to find me. She was trying to make me move out so they could take my house and cash in. The sheriff issued warrants. Within 48 hours, they raided the quiet house and seized hard drives, boxes of HOA records, and over $300,000 in checks from fake violations over 5 years. It made the local news under the headline, Shadow HOA Scam Busted in Clearwood Estates, 7 Detained in Fake Fines Fraud. I was invited to give a statement, but again, I stayed quiet. I let the facts speak. But I wasn't done yet. Using the documents I had, the emails, the videos, and the reports, my lawyer filed a civil lawsuit. I sued the fake HOA ring for harassment, emotional distress, property damage, and attempted fraud. Other neighbors joined in. The class action grew. And 3 months later we won in court. The ringleaders had to pay restitution. Karen, now facing charges for impersonation and tampering, had to sell her house to cover the legal costs. And as for me, I used the settlement money to do something Karen really would have hated. I hosted a neighborhood barbecue at my pool. Free drinks, loud music, giant inflatable water slide. Everyone was invited. Even Mr. Harlan brought out his harmonica and played Born in the USA while we grilled burgers. And on the fence next to the pool gate, I hung a giant banner that read, "Not under your HOA." Never was. But the final twist? Weeks later, while I was watering my plants, I noticed a package sitting at the edge of my lawn. No return address. Inside was the drone. And a note. Type. Game's not over. You made enemies. I walked straight to the sheriff's office and handed it in. And as I turned to leave, I smiled to myself and said under my breath, "Then let them come. I've got cameras now.